Michael Carter had always preferred the quiet, the low hum of office lights, the rhythmic clicking of keyboards, the occasional ping of the elevator. These were the sounds that brought him calm. A senior graphic designer at Marlowe & Co. Teens, boutique marketing firm nestled on the 8th floor of a glass building downtown, Michael lived in the realm of soft-spoken ideas and tidy routines. His desk was near the window, partially shielded by a tall ficus plant he cared for with more devotion than he did most people. He liked things neat, predictable. That's why when Emily Rivers joined the team, she might as well have been a thunderstorm crashing through his peaceful sky. She wasn't loud, but she had energy. Something alive in her that refused to be boxed in. She wore red shoes to meetings and laughed like she didn't care who was listening. Her desk, just 2 rows down, was a mosaic of sticky notes, half-drunk coffee cups, and sketch pads with swirling lines. Michael noticed everything about her. How she hummed under her breath while editing briefs, how she twirled her pen when deep in thought, how she sometimes bit her lip when reading emails. He knew the exact tilt of her smile when she liked something, and the furrow of her brow when she didn't. He also knew he could never tell her how he felt. It wasn't just shyness. Michael wasn't socially inept, not exactly. He could manage polite conversation, small talk, the occasional laugh at someone's joke, but when it came to feelings, real feelings, his tongue turned to stone. He'd had crushes before, fleeting and unspoken, but nothing like this. Nothing like Emily. It started on a Tuesday in November, the sky bruised with clouds and the office a little too quiet. Michael had watched her come in wearing a forest green scarf, her hair damp from the rain. She looked tired. Not the usual. Kind, but something deeper, like she'd been carrying the weight of something she wasn't ready to name. That evening, as the office emptied and lights dimmed, Michael remained at his desk, a blank Word document open on his screen. He didn't plan to write her a letter. It just happened. Dear you, I see the way your eyes scan the world, like it's a story waiting to be told. You don't know me, not really, but I know your laugh and how it lifts the room like the first breeze of spring. You might think no one notices, but someone does. You wore green today. It suits you. You suit this world, even when it doesn't. Always suit you back. You're not alone, even when it feels like it. Signed, yours. He stared at the words for a long time, hands hovering over the keyboard. Then he printed it, 1 page, crisp and simple. He folded it twice, slid it into an envelope, and left it on her desk when the floor was dark and empty. The next morning, he sat at his own desk, pretending to scroll through emails, heart pounding, like a drum in his chest. Emily arrived late, juggling her laptop and a latte. She sat, flopped her bag on the floor, and noticed the envelope. Michael watched from the corner of his eye as she opened it. She read it twice, then a third time. She didn't smile, not exactly, but her eyes softened. She folded the letter again, gently, like it was something precious. Then she tucked it into her purse. Michael exhaled. Over the next week, nothing changed. Emily didn't mention the letter. No gossip spread, no investigations launched. She simply went about her days, as lively and electric as always. But something in her was quieter now, like the letter had folded itself into her. Michael told himself that was it. 1 letter, 1 moment of courage. Enough to make his feelings real, even if only in silence. But 2 weeks later, he wrote another. You smiled at your screen today. Whatever it was, I hope it brought you joy. The world could use more of your smiles. So could I. This time. She lingered at her desk after reading it. She looked around as if sensing a presence she couldn't name. Michael kept his gaze locked on his screen, heart racing. She started wearing lipstick on Fridays, red like the shoes she wore to the quarterly team meeting. Michael noticed. He noticed everything. He never signed his real name. Always yours. Always typed, never handwritten. Anonymity was his armor. By the fifth letter, Emily was looking forward to them. Michael could tell. She arrived earlier. Her eyes would flick toward her desk as soon as she entered. When a letter was waiting, she'd sit with it in silence, like it was a conversation only she understood. She never told anyone. One day in late January, she left a reply. It was a sticky note, tucked beneath a paperweight shaped like a globe. Michael found it after lunch, when she'd stepped out for a meeting. To the one who sees me, thank you. I don't know who you are, but your words find me when I need them most. Yours too. He sat at his desk for a long time, staring at the note, the soft curl of her handwriting. He didn't take it, he left it there, but he carried the feeling with him. Weeks passed. The letters continued. He never responded directly to her note, but he wrote more. Poems sometimes, observations, encouragement. He never crossed a line. He never said, "I love you." But maybe he didn't have to. One Friday, she walked by his desk and left a muffin on the corner, blueberry, his favorite. She didn't say anything, just smiled and moved on. His heart stuttered. That night he wrote, "I didn't deserve the muffin, but thank you. You are a kindness in this world that too many take for granted. I never will." For Michael, the letters were no longer just an outlet. They were a lifeline, a way to say what he couldn't with his voice, a way to be brave, even if it was only behind a veil. But fear was never far behind. What if she found out? What if she felt betrayed? What if all the wonder and quiet joy turned to resentment? Still, he couldn't stop. He was writing to her heart now, and somewhere deep down, a part of him hoped that one day it might write back with more than sticky notes. Spring had arrived slowly, like someone easing into a room they weren't sure they were welcome in. Rain tapped the office windows with tentative fingers. Inside Marlowe and Kerr, deadlines came and went, presentations bloomed, and campaigns launched and fizzled. Life moved forward, but for Michael Carter, life had found a strange and beautiful pause. It had been nearly 5 months since he left the first letter. 5 months of soft words and gentle truths, typed in his favorite serif font, printed neatly, folded with care, and left quietly on the edge of Emily Rivers's desk every other Friday. Every letter was a risk. Every letter, a thread binding him closer to her, and she read them all. She never replied directly again, not with words. But there were signs, little changes. She started wearing her hair differently, down instead of up, like she knew someone admired the way it framed her face. Her earrings became more colorful, her notebook brighter. Once she brought in a daisy and left it in a glass cup on her desk. The note that week had mentioned her smile was like a field of wildflowers. Michael didn't know what they were, these small reciprocations. Reactions? Clues? Or maybe they were just hope, given shape. He had created a routine around the letters. He wrote them late at night, at his kitchen table under the flickering light of a cheap IKEA lamp. The words came easier in the quiet. Sometimes they were long, stretching 2 pages. Other times just a sentence. You are a soft light in a hard. Well, today you looked like a story I haven't read yet but already love. I don't need to be known, just to be heard. He never expected anything in return. He told himself that was the point. But the truth was, part of him waited for something. A moment, a shift, a sign that she felt the same. And one day, it came, though not the way he imagined. It was mid-May, a Thursday, and the office buzzed with a rare kind of energy. Rumors of layoffs had been floating for weeks, but instead, the company was announcing promotions and expansions. People laughed more than usual. Lunches lasted longer. Management walked around smiling like victorious generals. Michael sat at his desk, pretending to care about a logo redesign, but his attention kept drifting to Emily. She had been quiet all morning, unusually so. Her brow was drawn, her fingers tapping a rhythmless beat against her coffee cup. That afternoon, during the lull between meetings, she disappeared. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She just left. And when she came back 2 hours later, her eyes were red. Michael's chest tightened. That night he wrote, "I don't know what made you cry today, but I'd carry that weight for you if I could. You are stronger than your sadness, brighter than your storms." The next morning she came in, saw the envelope, and held it to her chest before even reading it. That was the moment. That was when he knew she wasn't just reading them. She was waiting for them. As summer rolled in, the letters became more personal. Still anonymous, still careful, but braver. Michael described moments he witnessed, how she bit the inside of her cheek when thinking hard, or how she spoke with her hands when she was passionate about an idea. He wrote about her strength, her kindness, how she always stayed late to help the interns without being asked. He began to love her, not from afar, but deeply, fully, messily, in ways that scared him. And yet he said nothing. Telling her the truth meant risking everything. It meant taking off the mask and showing her the ordinary man behind it. Michael wasn't charming or bold. He wasn't the type who turned heads. His humor was dry, his past unremarkable. He wasn't who she dreamed about. He was just him. And so he hid. In August, Emily started dating someone. His name was Darren, a consultant from a partner firm who came in every few weeks to meet with the executive team. He was tall, confident, well-dressed. The kind of man people noticed, and the kind who noticed Emily. Michael learned this from the snippets of conversation at the office. The way Emily suddenly had plans after work on Thursdays, the new necklace she wore that didn't seem like something she would buy for herself. The letters kept coming. "I hope he sees the way your eyes light up when you talk about your work. I hope he understands how lucky he is to hold your time." He hated writing them. But he didn't stop, because the truth was, he didn't know how to be silent anymore. Not when he had learned to speak through letters. By September, their correspondence, if it could even be called that, had grown into a kind of secret ritual. She didn't respond with notes anymore, but she sometimes left objects: a pressed flower between pages of a magazine, a folded napkin with a doodle of a coffee cup, a quote written on the corner of a sticky note. Michael treasured them like relics. He kept them all in a shoebox under his bed. The letters he sent, the things she left, even the muffin wrapper from the first time she acknowledged him. To anyone else, it would have looked like the artifacts of obsession. To him, it was the closest he'd ever come to connection. Then came October, and everything began to unravel. The first problem wasn't Darren, it was the gossip. It started with Chloe from HR, who'd found an envelope Emily left open by mistake. She didn't read it, at least that's what she claimed. But the office was small and curiosity spread like fire. People began to whisper. Someone asked Emily directly. She brushed it off, said it was a friend playing a joke. But then Mark, from accounting, loud, arrogant Mark, claimed he had been the mystery writer, said it at the Friday happy hour like it was a joke, but smiled like it wasn't. Emily's face turned to stone. Michael watched the whole thing from the far end of the bar, heart thudding, stomach twisting. She said nothing. But the next letter he left said everything. "You are not a joke, and anyone who treats you like one doesn't deserve to speak your name." For the first time in almost a year, she didn't take the letter. She left it on her desk. All day, Michael almost couldn't breathe. Then just before she left that evening, she walked over to his desk, quietly, almost like she didn't mean to, and dropped the unopened envelope in his trash can. No words, just silence. Michael didn't. Right the next Friday, or the one after that, Emily stopped looking for the letters. Fall set in, colder than usual, and Michael wondered if he had finally done what he feared most. Broken something delicate and sacred, something he never should have touched. He told himself it was for the best. She was with someone else. She deserved the truth, not a ghost. And yet every morning he looked at her desk, and every night he sat at his kitchen table, staring at a blank document, fingers trembling over the keyboard. 2 weeks passed. The silence, once a comfort to Michael, had become unbearable. It haunted him, lingering in every corner of the office, thick and accusing. Emily no longer looked for the letters. She passed by him in the halls with the same warmth she gave the vending machine. Not cold, not rude, just indifferent. Worse than anger, worse than rejection. It was like he'd vanished from a space he never occupied openly. He had stopped writing. He told himself it was the right thing, that it was respectful, that it was over. But on the 15th day, after a long night of staring at a blank screen, he printed one more letter. I don't know if you miss the words, but I do. I never meant to make you uncomfortable. I only ever meant to make you feel seen. I will go quiet if that's what you want, but part of me hopes you'll write back. He didn't sign it this time, not even yours. Just left the page bare at the bottom, vulnerable in its silence. He slipped it under a file on her desk, knowing she wouldn't see it until she settled in. That morning, he sat at his desk with his coffee untouched and stared at his inbox without seeing a word. At 9:16 a.m., she walked in. She was wearing a navy cardigan and a burgundy scarf, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Michael heard her pull back her chair, shuffle her papers, and then pause. She lifted the letter. He dared a glance. Her eyes scanned the page slowly. When she reached the end, she didn't fold it up like she usually did. She placed it in her drawer, closed it gently, and said nothing. But the next morning, something was waiting at Michael's desk. A small, white envelope. No name, no handwriting, just sealed. His pulse thundered in his ears as he opened it. Inside was a note typed on the same plain paper he used, centered. One sentence. I miss the words too. He blinked. Read it twice, 3 times, and then he smiled for the first time in days. The next few weeks unfolded like a secret between pages. She didn't leave a letter every time, but when she did, she followed the same pattern, typed, unsigned, simple. Sometimes 2 sentences, sometimes 10, always meaningful. It was like they'd built a bridge across silence. Michael responded in kind, never breaking the unspoken rules. They were 2 ghosts passing notes, neither willing to fully show their face, but both drawn to the mystery of the other. Their words began to feel like conversations. Her, what made you start this? Him, a moment I couldn't forget, a scarf, a storm, the way you looked like you were holding something in and no one noticed. Her, you write like you've known me for years. Him, maybe in some way I have. Her, I don't know if I'm falling, in love with the words or the person behind them. Him, I'm afraid I'm both. It terrified him, how close they were coming to the edge of something real. Still, he didn't reveal himself. Not yet. Not while Darren was still in the picture, which, despite everything, he was. Michael didn't ask. He didn't want to know. But he saw them once, leaving together after work. Emily laughing at something Darren said, her hand brushing his arm. It sliced through him like paper-thin regret. The next letter he wrote was short. If he ever stops making you laugh, I'll be waiting in the quiet. He regretted it the moment he dropped it off. Too much, too honest, but she responded. Some of the quiet is louder than anything he says. That night, Michael didn't sleep. He lay awake, wondering if he had imagined that response, if it was just a breadcrumb he wanted to mean more than it did. But in the end, he didn't need certainty. He just needed to keep writing. As winter crept in again, their correspondence deepened. They started exchanging pieces of themselves, not just observations or flattery, but fears and memories, things people don't say out loud. Him, I used to stutter when I was a kid, still do sometimes when I'm nervous. Writing was the only way I could say what I meant. Her, I had a friend in college who stuttered. He taught me how to be patient with silence. You remind me of him. Him. I'd like to believe I remind you of someone good. Her. My mother used to leave me notes in my lunchbox every day. She died when I was 15. Sometimes your letters feel like the same kind of love. Him. I'll never take that comparison lightly. Thank you for letting me be a part of your story. Her. Have you ever fallen for someone you knew you could never have? Him. Every time I see my reflection after thinking of you, they never talked in person. That line remained uncrossed. But they began to orbit each other differently. She glanced at him more. He returned her looks with soft, measured silence. The space between them shrank, even if only in spirit. One Friday morning, a storm hit the city. Transit was a mess. Half the office stayed home. But both Michael and Emily showed up. By noon, most of the team had left early. The office felt like a ghost town. Michael sat at his desk, pretending to work, the latest letter tucked beneath her keyboard, waiting. She returned from a call and found it. Instead of reading it right away, she turned in her chair and looked directly at him. It was the first time she had really looked at him in months. No veil of distraction, no casual glance. Just eyes meeting across the space of two desks and everything unspoken between them. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. That afternoon, he found something in his drawer. Not a letter, a small book, a blank journal. On the inside cover, a note: if the words ever run out of room, fill this. I'm ready when you are. No signature, but she didn't need one anymore. The journal sat on Michael's desk for 2 days before he touched it. At first he couldn't even look at it. It felt too personal, too monumental, like a door was being held open for him, and he was too afraid to step through. A part of him wondered if this was her way of saying, "Tell me who you are." And maybe, finally, it was time. But how do you pull the curtain back on a secret that's become your whole identity? He ran his fingers along the smooth leather cover. There was no lock, no inscription, just a blank first page, a wide open canvas. Terrifying. On the third night he opened it. "Dear you, I don't know what page this is in our story. I've lost track, but I know that every word has led me here. And I know that if I don't take this next step, I may always wonder what could have been. I have wanted to tell you who I am for a long time. And maybe you already know. Maybe you've always known. Or maybe I'm still a mystery, and the truth will break the spell. But I've written you 100 letters, and not a single one was a lie. I have seen you, I have cared for you, and slowly, quietly, I have fallen for you." He stopped there. He didn't sign it. Not yet. He left the journal on her desk early the next morning, the way he always left the letters, quiet, unannounced, like a whisper instead of a knock. Then he waited and waited. She came in late, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. She looked tired, distracted. He watched from behind his monitor as she noticed the journal, opened it. She didn't react immediately. No smile, no frown. She just read. Then she closed it and slipped it into her bag. That was all. But for Michael, it felt like jumping off a cliff and not knowing if the parachute would open. The reply came in a way he didn't expect, not through a journal, not in a letter. It came through Emily herself. 3 days later, on a cloudy Wednesday, she approached his desk in broad daylight, in the middle of the office. She stood beside him for a moment, and when he finally looked up, startled, she said, "Just one thing. I'd like to talk. Not here." He swallowed hard, nodded. "After work?" "Yes," she said. "Somewhere quiet." They met at a small park a few blocks from the office, the kind of place with worn benches and rustling trees, and a pond that reflected the sky like a secret. Michael arrived first. He sat on a bench, heart thudding, hands jammed in his coat pockets. He kept going over what he'd say, how he'd explain, what he'd do if she was angry or hurt or disappointed. When Emily arrived, she didn't sit right away. She stood in front of him, arms crossed, her eyes studying him like she was seeing him for the first time, and maybe she was. "I figured it out weeks ago," she said quietly. Michael blinked. "You did?" She nodded. It was the way you wrote about the ficus. No one else would know how often I water it or that I name my plants." He laughed, breathless with nerves. "I didn't think that would give me away." She sat beside him, close but not touching. "I was angry at first, not because you wrote the letters, but because you didn't trust me with the truth sooner. I was afraid," he said, "afraid if I told you, it would ruin the magic, that I wasn't who you imagined." She looked at him then, really looked. "You weren't who I imagined. You were better." He exhaled, something loosening in his chest for the first time in months. "You mean that?" Emily smiled softly. "The words made me fall first, but the man behind them made me stay." The days that followed were strange and new. They didn't make any grand announcements. They didn't start dating immediately. There was no office gossip, no sudden change in behavior, just two people learning to see each other without the veil of metaphor. The letters stopped, at least the anonymous kind. Michael still wrote to her, but now he signed his name, left her notes in her locker, slipped her a folded page at lunch with a line of poetry or something silly, and she wrote back. For a while, it felt like a dream, but not all stories unfold neatly. Rumors started again in early November, not because of the letters, but because of Darren. He had come back into town for a pitch meeting and made a scene in the lobby when he saw Emily with Michael. Nothing dramatic, just a look, a tight-lipped smile, a lingering presence. People noticed. Later that day, Michael found an email in his inbox from Darren. Funny how the quiet ones always sneak in under the radar. "She's good at playing Muse, isn't she? Watch your step, Carter. Some stories don't have happy endings." Michael didn't reply. But that night he couldn't sleep. Emily told him the truth over dinner. "I broke things off weeks ago," she said, "even before the journal. But I didn't tell him right away. It was messy. He wasn't ready to let go." Michael nodded slowly. "Do you regret it?" She reached across the table, took his hand. "Not even a little." He believed her, but the weight of being real, no longer just words on a page, was heavier than he expected. Being anonymous had been easy, safe. But now every flaw, every insecurity was visible. And there were days he wondered if the man she met on the page was too different from the one who sat across from her in the real world. One night he said it out loud. "I'm not as brave in person," he confessed. "I still get stuck. I still doubt. I'm not always good with words when I have to say them out loud." Emily looked at him and said, "Michael, the man who wrote to me loved quietly. That doesn't mean he loved less. He loved better." Thanksgiving came and went. Winter crept back in. The office filled with holiday plans and end-of-year chaos. Through it all, Emily and Michael stayed steady. No labels, no pressure, just presence. But the last Friday before the Christmas break, she handed him something, a wrapped box. No note, just a small tag that said, "For all the letters you haven't written yet." He opened it later that night. It was a typewriter, vintage, restored, with a single piece of paper already loaded into it, typed in the center. "I've always liked the sound of your silence. Now let's hear your voice."